Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the conference with Le Cercle des Langues. I am Chanel, and I will be taking you through this B1 to B2 level conference. We have an amazing topic for this evening, and it is how to use time indicators. So that is for, since, ago, already, still, and yet. There are many differences between how we use them in French and in English. So this conference is really going to help you understand how to use them in English. And just for some administration for this evening, the conference will be 25 minutes long, and we will have 5 minutes at the end for a question and answer session. You can either put your questions in the chat, or you can write your questions on the side or on a piece of paper, and we will have a look at them at the end. So let's begin. So tonight's conference consists of 4 parts. We are going to begin with an introduction. We are then going to speak about for, since, and ago, and what the meanings of these words are in English. And then we will look at already, still, and yet. Our last part of our conference is where we will do a small summary just to recap and have a look at what we covered in the conference. So, as I said, please feel free to take notes during the presentation. However, you will be sent the presentation via email after the conference. So you will have the PDF, so you can just use your notes to compare and to revise some of the useful vocabulary and grammar from tonight's presentation. So, time indicators in English are words and phrases that provide information about the timing of an action, an event, or a state. They help to clarify when something happens, how long it lasts, or how frequently it occurs. Therefore, depending on the situation, these are the main time indicators in English: past indicators, present indicators, future indicators, and frequency indicators. If you are looking for a word that can explain indicators, I want you to think of an indicator is something that shows. It shows the past, it shows the present, it shows the future, and it shows the frequency. So that is another word for indicator. At this point, it is important to mention that this presentation focuses on these time indicators. So even though there are many others, today we are going to be looking at for, since, ago, already, still, and yet. However, let's review the most common time indicators. So even though those ones I mentioned are the focus, we have others. Let's have a look. For example, yesterday. Yesterday is a past indicator. That means it shows the past. Last night, last week, earlier, the day before yesterday, in the past, last time, recently, since, for, ago, already, still, and yet. On the right-hand side, you will see the translation in French. Present indicators: today, right now, at present, currently, at the moment, these days, at this moment, now, as well as the ones that I have mentioned before at the bottom. Indicators of the future are tomorrow, next week, next month, in the future, later, soon, in the near future, in the long term, and later on. Then we still have for, already, still, and yet. It is good to mention that, just as a reminder, that when we speak about last plus a moment in time or a duration of time, it means dernier. So last week, la semaine dernière, last month, le mois dernier. But if we want to speak about something in the future, we talk about next week, next month. And we do not use it as we do in French when we say la semaine prochaine, la semaine prochaine. We simply say next week. So it does not get an article. Okay? So the first three that we are going to look at is for, since, and ago. For is used to specify a duration of time. It indicates the length of time something has happened or will happen. For example, I have lived here for 5 years. She has been studying for 3 hours. They will be on vacation for 2 weeks. In these sentences, for introduces a period of time during which the action occurs. Now, I know that it is different in French because on dit depuis 5 ans. So in English, depuis, since, is used for something different. If you want to know how do I say 5 years, 2, so any amount of time will always be introduced by the preposition for. So we will use for. Let's look at since. Since is used to indicate the starting point of an action or event that continues up to the present moment. It specifies the exact time when something began. For example, I have lived here since 2019. She has been studying since this morning. They have been on vacation since last Monday. In these examples, since introduces the specific moment in time when the action started. So, to go back so that we can see the comparison, we can use the exact same sentences, but because we are using a different indicator of time, we are using for. That tells us we need to give the duration of time. 5 years, 5 hours, 5 minutes, 5 weeks. And then when we move on to since, we need to be more specific. So we need to give either a date or an indication of when it started. So since 2019, since this morning, or since last Monday. Ago. Ago is used to specify how much time has passed since a particular event happened. It indicates a point in the past relative to the present. For example, I moved here 5 years ago. Il y a 5 ans. She started studying 3 hours ago. He left for vacation 2 weeks ago. In these sentences, ago is placed after the time expression and indicates how far back in the past something has occurred. So, en français, on dit il y a 2 jours. So, your time expression or your duration of time will go after il y a. In English, it's the other way around. We first put the duration of time, and after the duration of time, we add ago, which is our indicator of time. So here we are going to have a little exercise, and I would like you to please put your answers in the chat. So I'm going to ask Christian, I will give you number 1. Christine, I will give you number 2. Yves, number 3. Karine, number 4. And one day I will give you number 5. If you could please write the responses in the chat. We need to fill in the space with the appropriate time indicator. So that means we are either going to use since, for, or ago. So Karine has given us since. So Karine's and Wande has given us his. Christian will wait for you. So I'm going to look into the chat so we can see where we are. So the example that I gave to Karine, I think I gave Karine number 4. So also just put, thank you, Karine. So it says, they have been working on the project since last Sunday. Perfectly. Christine, what number were you, Christine? I think I gave you number 2, Christine. She sent her reports 3 days ago. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Christian, what did you say? Est-ce que vous pouvez le mettre sur le chat, s'il vous plaît? Ah, sorry, I can't hear you, Christian. Le chat, c'est le 4e bouton en bas de votre écran. We will look at one day. I called you 5 hours ago. That is correct. I called you 5 hours ago. So, Christian, we will look at yours. My mother has lived in Lyon since. Beautiful, thank you. Since 1998. So that is all correct. Thank you so much for your participation. Let's look at the next part. Already, just, still, and yet. And these are the present perfect examples. We often use just, yet, still, and already with the present perfect because they are related to the present moment. Okay, so let's have a look at that in more detail. Just used with the present perfect means a short time before. So for example, I've just seen Bob coming out of the cinema. So en français, on a le venir de, which shows that it is a moment that has just happened. For example, je viens de voir Bob sorti du cinéma. Je viens de. Jen's or Jen has just called. Can you ring her back, please? So it is something that was very, very shortly. It happened very, very shortly, a short time ago. Just comes between the auxiliary verb and the past participle. So you will have Jen has, you will put just, and then you will have the past participle at the end. Yet. The word yet is commonly used with the present perfect tense, but can also be found in other tenses. For example, yet can be translated as déjà, in affirmative questions, pas encore in negative statements, and encore in other contexts depending on the sentence structure. For example, she hadn't arrived yet when the meeting started. For the past perfect continuous tense, he hadn't been living in the city for a year yet when he got the job offer. And for the simple present tense, is dinner ready yet? The present perfect. Yet, used with the present perfect, means at any time up to now. We use it to emphasize that we expect something to happen soon. Yet, in this context, is only used in negative sentences and questions. For example, has Steve finished his homework yet? I haven't finished it yet. I'll do it after dinner. So again, it emphasizes something we expect to happen soon or that will be completed soon. And instead of giving a time or a duration, we just say yet. Yet comes at the end of the sentence or the question. Still. We use still to say that something is continuing. It has not changed or stopped. So, for example, if we say he is still in the shower, it means il est encore sous la douche. However, if we say he isn't out of the shower yet, we are following the correct rule for yet because it is a negative sentence. And at the same time, we are saying the same thing. He is still in the shower is an affirmation. He isn't out of the shower yet is the negative. However, we are saying the exact same thing. Is it still raining? That is the question, and it means that it's the present continuous, and it shows that something in this moment is continuing. So as I'm speaking, it is still raining. We sometimes use still to show that we feel surprised or impatient about a situation. This is more common in negative sentences, usually with the present perfect. For example, if you have ordered something in a restaurant and it has not come yet, you can say, "Oh my goodness, I'm still waiting." It means you started waiting a long time ago, and at this moment, you are still waiting. It has continued. I still haven't found my wallet, meaning you started searching, and up until this moment, you have not yet found your wallet. Still normally goes in the middle of the sentence, in mid position. That means before the verb, but after the verb be, when it's the only verb in the sentence. For example, he still works in a bank. So there you can see we are using the verb work. So therefore it will go between the subject, the person who is doing the action, and the verb. But if I were to say he is still at the bank, or he is still in the bank, I am now using the verb to be. That means that it will be the subject plus the verb to be, he is. We will then add still at the bank. So before all the other verbs, but after the verb to be. In questions, the mid position is after the subject. For example, are you still there? So you can imagine that to ask a question with the verb to be means that we are going to use the inversion method. We are going to start with the verb, then the subject. So the principle remains the same, because if it was an affirmative, it would be the subject, the verb to be, and then still. So we are still respecting the formula. We are just doing the inversion method to make it a question. Still with the present perfect. Still used with the present perfect means that something hasn't happened. So we need to be careful. We use it to emphasize that we expected the thing to happen earlier. So still in this context is only used in negative sentences. For example, he's been waiting for an hour and the bus still hasn't come. Fred still hasn't replied to my email. Maybe he's on holiday. Still comes between the subject, so the bus or they, etc., and the auxiliary verb, haven't or hasn't. Already. We use already when something happens earlier than expected or earlier than something else. So some present simple examples. I am already home. Or she is already at work. So what we are saying is that you expected me to be home later. So, for example, if you have a husband who phones his wife to say, could you please stop at the supermarket? And because he was expecting his wife to leave work later than the phone call, and she responds by saying, I am already at home. That means it's maybe too late because I am already at home and maybe the supermarket is next to her place of work. So when you are going to use already, we are using it as we use déjà, because it's exactly the same, and it means that something happens earlier than expected. Already with the present perfect means before now. We use it to emphasize that something happened before something else or earlier than expected. You have already spent your salary and it's 2 weeks before payday. The train has left already. Already can come between the auxiliary and the main verb or at the end of the clause. So you have two options. We normally use already in questions and affirmative sentences, not in negative sentences. In negative sentences, we normally use yet. So, for example, it's 6 o'clock and it's already dark. Is it already dark? It's only 6 o'clock. So, let's see if we can translate the following sentences. Normally, I would do it in the chat, but let's have a look. It says, Je suis encore dans la maison. Je suis encore dans la maison. So here we are saying, I am still in the house. I am still in the house. Je suis encore dans la maison. Elle a déjà terminé ses devoirs. Déjà, she has already finished her homework. Let's have a look in the chat. I'm still at home. Beautiful. Thank you. I'm still at home. Thank you, Ande. So that is it. I am still at home. Or she has already finished her homework. Thank you. So let's look at a small summary. For indicates duration and it's often used with the present perfect tense. He has lived here for 5 years. Since indicates a starting point in time, and it's often used with the present perfect tense to show continuity from the past to the present. For example, I have worked here since 2019. Ago indicates a point in time in the past, and it is often used with the simple past tense to highlight the completed nature of the action. For example, she moved here 5 years ago. Remembering that ago comes at the end of the sentence. Already is used to indicate that something has happened before the expected time. For example, I have already finished my homework. Still is used to express that something continues to happen or be the case beyond what was expected. For example, she is still working on the project. Yet is used in questions and negative sentences to indicate that something hasn't happened up to the present moment. Example, I haven't finished my homework yet. So I would like to thank everyone for joining me for this evening's conference. A small reminder that you will be sent the presentation via email. Like that, you can have a look again at those examples and you can see how you can use it in your everyday life. My absolute pleasure. Do you have any questions or comments that you would like to make? If so, you can unmute your microphone now. Thank you everyone for the beautiful compliments. It's my absolute pleasure to share these conferences with you. And I hope that you found it interesting. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, so have a wonderful weekend too. So.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.